So I made a video yesterday about the rising unemployment rates amongst Black women, and the response that I got was definitely very alarming. There were a lot of negative, comments, and most of these comments were really coming from Black men who were saying things like it's because Black women have bad attitudes, it's because DEI, it's because AI is taking over, and many of which just miss the whole thing, like who cares, nobody cares, it's time for Black women to be taken down a notch. And it was really alarming because the point of me posting that statistic was to get us to think critically about what's really happening. But instead, a lot of the comments were really more mean and almost conspiracy theory type comments. And so I really want to talk about it. So let's look solely at the numbers, because numbers are where we can at least hang our hat on and look at things quantitatively. So when we look at the American labor force or workforce, we see that it pretty closely mirrors the distribution by race of the American population. So what do I mean by that? So the American population, as of 2024, is comprised of 58% white, 19% Hispanic, 13% Black, 7% Asian. When we look at the workforce, you have a similar distribution of race. So in the workforce, with the exception that Hispanic and whites are often lumped into a single category, but when we look at the workforce, the total workforce, you'll find 74% is white and Hispanic, so it's combined, 13% Black or African American, and then 7% Asian. Now,
So essentially, what she had a conversation about was the fact that all of the layoffs, so the majority of layoffs during the latest jobs report, was primarily affecting women and specifically Black women more than anything. And the reality is that the types of jobs and the types of degrees that these women have disproportionately affects them that don't necessarily mirror whatever it is the general population is. So if you got 13% Black people, but then you have an over concentration of one specific group in one specific sector versus another sector that's not necessarily thriving because diversity, equity, and inclusion has been removed, and now you have to be merit based or the degrees that you selected. But then you combine that with the fact that Black women or women in general were bragging about the fact that they didn't need men and their degrees was going to sustain them and they don't care about it, and so student loans and all of this, and now they're starting to complain about the fact that they can't find jobs. It mirrors what people have been saying for a long time. Women are disproportionately affected by layoffs more than men. It's simple.
where it gets interesting is when we move into the STEM workforce, you'll see that there is a little bit of a disparity, amongst Black Americans. So what you'll find once you move into the STEM workforce, you'll find that 64% of all workers in STEM are white, and then you'll find that 15% are Hispanic, 10% are Asian, even though they represent 7% of the workforce, and then you'll find that African Americans are 9%
Even though they
in the STEM
13%.
workforce, although they represent 13% overall
Correct.
in the overall workforce. So
So basically, we pick trash ass programs, curriculums, and degrees, but then we blame it on systemic racism or problems or whatever, or we lean on diversity, equity, and inclusion in order to qualify ourselves as deserving of being a part of a specific demographic of the workforce. That's really what it is. Asians are 7% of the population. They take over 10% of whatever demographic. And anybody that has worked within a technology field, even if it's in a traditional role, right? So, for example, I was in information technology and I overseen UX UI. And then also, obviously, I did some work as far as software engineering, back end, front end, all of that in the earlier part of my career before I transitioned over in UX UI. But then at the same time, if you look at the project managers, the scrum masters, the product owners, all of these different people, right? Everybody within this agile environment or switching over into an agile environment, it was Asians, white people. You would usually be the only Black person. All of that, right? So it's not and even when during the pandemic, when everything was booming and everybody was just trying to hurry up and get a job, and a lot of times you would see Black women they would have to be incentivized to do it. And then if I talk to people, I actually interviewed somebody on this channel, and the woman was like, yo, it's hard to get a woman to actually go into information technology, STEM, right? All they want to do is get business degrees or go into African American studies or go into underwater basket weaving. So it's reflective of what you see happening within the workforce. And so you're going to be disproportionately affected by layoffs or whatever because they thought that they can get these forever government jobs that was handouts. And that's not what we need to be doing. We need to be making sure that we build in a workforce that's more reflective of what the world needs, not what we feel like we deserve. And when you seen people in her comments, all you seen was guys saying, I told you so. I thought you didn't need men. All of this stuff, right? So it's a waterfall effect of what happens within our culture and what happens within society.
You can see that there is, clearly a disparity there. That same, distribution does not carry over into the STEM industry. Then when you pair that with other data that highly suggests that Black people are more likely to be overrepresented in service type roles, or what's considered to be low paying, medium skill or semi skill or no skill positions, like bus driving, postal worker, home health aide. When you look at that statistic, then it helps you understand and put into context what may be happening here. So we can say real quick or very quickly that that it's unlikely that AI is the cause for a lot of the unemployment that we're seeing, because again, by and large, African Americans that are working in the workforce are by and large working in non-technical, semi-skilled, low-paying positions. And so these positions are not necessarily, they're service-based, so they're not necessarily being taken over by AI. AI is not driving buses. AI is not taking care of people in nursing homes, etc. So when we look at that, we realize that there is an abundance of individuals or Black Americans.
I like how she is not necessarily targeting the original point of the conversation that Black women are the ones that are disproportionately affected and being laid off. We want to make it a Black whole thing, but we'll get there. I'm hoping that she bring it back because she trying to. It seems as though she's trying to take responsibility off of the decisions that are being made by the demographic that is being laid off the most,
who don't necessarily have the skill sets to compete with higher paying jobs. And so more importantly, when you see higher unemployment rates, you know that the group of people that are going to be hit hardest by this with respect to higher unemployment rates amongst Black women are going to be those Black women who are working in non-STEM fields. So what does it all mean? I can't necessarily tell you what it all means. I can't tell you who's replacing, some of these low end positions and where those positions are going. What I can tell you is that, again, these service based positions that have typically been occupied by Black Americans, AI is not taking over. So with that in mind, we need to then think critically, like, okay, so what is happening? And so what can we do to mitigate? How can we improve, our numbers in terms of employment rate? How can we improve our numbers in terms of pay and the types of jobs that we work? And one interesting thing before we answer that is, we can sort of look at, the Chinese women as an example. Chinese women, I think, are a perfect example because there's some semblance between, I'll say their struggle and sort of the woman's struggle here in the United States. And what you find in China is that, by and large, women in the workforce work in jobs that are technical, that are manufacturing based positions.
so basically what we're saying is that you're not men, and no matter how it is that you try to spin it, no matter how it is that we try to slice it, the numbers is the numbers and it tells the bigger story. I'm going to put a link down in the description to this woman because I always like to give credit to the content creators. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. Teach Henley, 40% off your first order, 20% off for life. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm going to holler at you guys later. Let me know what y'all think inside of the comments.